Welcome to the We Are All Dying podcast. I'm your host, Jenna Goodhand, and through these conversations, I hope that we all become more comfortable talking about death. On today's show, we have René Khan, and we talk all things breath and the transitions that we take as we move from this life to another. Thank you so much for tuning in to this conversation.
Yeah, well, these discussions aren't the morbidity of it. This is not morbid. This is the practical reality of living and going through these experiences and allowing our limbic system to be calm and to adjust accordingly when these mass events occur, and it truly is a celebration. And, it just depends on how much we're exposed to it and how we can process it.
Absolutely. Well, with that, René, let's jump right in. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate being here. This is awesome.
Okay, let's talk about death. I like to kind of have people time travel a little bit and go back in their own lives and maybe reflect on maybe the first time you realized death was a thing, or you had a really meaningful death experience, whether it was like a pet or a grandparent or someone in your life. Can you kind of remember when that journey started for you?
Vividly. Vividly. Yeah, I think for me, it was when I was about 4 years old and my mother's mother passed away. And I have just little blips of memories of her. But the story goes is that when we went to go view her body, and my mom was holding me, and I looked at her. I tried to get in with her, and it was one of those deals, right? I just wanted to get in there, and everyone's like, "Oh no, pull her away," but that was really, really young. And now as time has gone on, now I'm 46. And, I've had a lot of friends of mine who are no longer here, who have transitioned into the other space and time. Honestly, about a year ago, February, my cat passed away, and we've been best friends for about 12 years. And, being a therapist and being everything that I've been working with people, and, I've worked massage with people who are in their, end stage cancer therapy and working them through that transition. And, no matter how much you try to prepare and say, yes, I look at this person or organism and I understand it, the timing and everything. But when she had passed, it was still unexpected. And, it really pulled the rug. It was a reality for me about just really sitting with it, and not trying to run from it or trying to push it away or push it down or anywhere. And yeah, and ever since then, my outlook has shifted. Like, I think about death every day because it's part of when I wake up. As the day is born, it also ends, right? There's all this duality within it. And so coming to grips and just being okay is really, really important. And it was really an adjusting moment for my limbic as well to notice that my friend was gone, and then to like just, you're seeing echoes of this person and stuff. And it's sad at one point, but then it evolves into joy. And then it's almost like just this calmness when you think of them. Yeah.
So talking about like the sitting and like the being with it, if you take yourself kind of back to that, or maybe you still have those moments, like what are some of the thoughts that you're aware of that are kind of going through your mind, whether it's like the resistance of the sitting with it or the trying to move through it? Is there any sort of conscious language that you're aware of that's happening?
Yeah, I'm very visual. And so for me, I always think about, it tends to be a flower, and the flower as it blossoms, and it has this moment of as a seed, and it comes in and it opens up and it reaches this maximum potential of openness. And then after that, it does the opposite and folds on itself. And so this is life. These are relationships, right? We have this moment where we're young and we're virile and we can be open. And as we get older, we just really open up I practice a lot of yoga as well, right? So opening my heart and like cracking open my ribs until like be open. And then after a period of time, it comes back down. And so, I'm very visual when it comes to thinking about it, or when it comes into my space and my mind.
Yeah. Wow, you're also very physical. So where does grief or death like exist in your body or in bodies that you've experienced with your work? Can you kind of reflect on anything to do with bodies and
No,
grief?
it's really good. It's a cool question. I feel like I was talking so my mom just went in for a quadruple bypass last week, right? It was really last minute, unexpected. She had a 85 to 90% blockage of her left ventricle artery. It was crazy. We went in for a quick moment thinking it was going to be a stent, and then ended up staying for a whole week in like emergency. And thankfully everything worked out well. And, she's making a full recovery at home right now. But she and I had this discussion about mind and where is mind, right? What is mind and where does it go? Where does it come from? And we always think about the brain, and, people who suffer massive head brain trauma, they lose memory, they lose functionality, but slowly with time, it comes back. So is it hiding somewhere in there? Is it hiding in our gut? I think a lot of times when we have emotional distress, we'll feel that dropping of our stomach, right? We feel that adrenaline and that butterflies. And so I kind of think, honestly, I feel like it's almost in the stomach, right? There's like an intelligence there and an emotional base. And if we can ground in, and so, with practicing yoga, I heard once in a documentary, they said, with each breath that we practice with yoga, we're preparing ourselves for our last breath.
Mm,
And,
yeah.
and I hold that pretty close to my heart. And I think about, walking around, and as I breathe, as I hold my body, am I opening my breath? Am I closing? Is this my last breath? And if it is it a good one? And open. So yeah, to answer your question, I'd say it's more of a stomach thing, and it sounds kind of cheesy, but almost like breathing through it, just
Mhm.
breathing through, and the preparation of breath and mind allows that to transition easier. For example, after my mom was in her procedure, we received a call from the nurse's office saying that she came out of anesthesia and she was repeating herself and she was kind of stuck. And she kept saying her name over and over, and she answered regular questions, but she couldn't get past this. And our fear was my mother's father had a very similar procedure, and then he had a stroke when he was under. When he came back out, he wasn't the same, and then he passed on shortly after. So there was this underlining fear. And so when my father told me the nurse had called him, there was that drop in my stomach, and I was like, okay, there it is. Let's just go back to my training, which was just to relax and breathe and let it open and settle, sit with it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, we talked about you can prepare, but you can't experience the loss of a death of a person that you love, or a being that you love until the time. But what are some things that thinking about that loss or death can do for us while we're living?
So that's a really good one. I feel like coming from a place of gratitude, being grateful, one of my mantras that I've been practicing for the past few months now daily has been to accept things for what they truly are, and not to fall for to be participating in any of my illusions of what I might want something to be, right? To just see what it truly is and to accept things. So when my mother was going in, for example, it was like, okay, whatever comes out of this, I accept it. Thank you for whatever it is. And when you have gratitude and you can see how precious and how delicate life is, it makes you every moment, for me, every moment, it's like I can honor it, I can see it, and I can be truly, truly thankful for it. And I really work on not taking things for granted, because it's easy as the human experience to just be like, oh, hey, Jen, I'll see you later. There may never be that later. And that's
Yeah.
why it's so special to share this time together, you
Mhm.
know? Yeah.
So, can you think of a time in your life where you became more focused on death? That whether it was your own realization that, hey, I've only got so many breaths left, or I really should start to take inventory of the people around me. Did, was there anything that happened in your life that kind of gave you that shift, or a daily practice, maybe because of who you are and what you do?
Really funny. So when I was living in Canada way back when I was younger, right, and I was in Ontario, I was at a band camp, and that night there was a really bad storm, and my father's mother was in the hospital, and she had multiple myeloma. And that night during the storm, I had this dream, and I woke up from this nightmare, and I my bunk buddy, I was like, "Hey, bro, I just had this messed up dream." He's like, "Well, what is it?" And I said, it was like I saw Freddy Krueger kissing a woman, and then a flower, this like white flower blossomed, and it's all I saw. And he's like, "Man, that's kind of weird." And I said, "Yeah, tell me about it." And the next day, my parents come and pick me up at the camp. They say, "Your grandmother passed away last night." And it was just like, whoa, there it was. And I was maybe 13 at the time,
Mm.
13. So that's when I first started to think about, well, whoa, so there's something bigger than just us standing here and interacting, and then we just transition to some other, the matter stops, the look, the body. So yeah, it was at that moment I just started to really take more account for the people around me and the things that I share and how I share myself and the things I allow into my field.
Wow,
Yeah.
that is quite memorable and impactful of an experience.
Yeah.
Um, so you like observing the human condition.
Absolutely.
um,
Yeah.
why do you think that as humans we're so uncomfortable talking about death or facing death, including it in our everyday life in a way that could be beneficial?
Mhm. Well, the human condition is to, like we just said, it's like, see you later, right? It just doesn't come into our field that's not a possible, that's the only possibility, right? And so we're just conditioned to just acting like, tra la la, let me get in my car and jump around and run my daily grind. And you know, eventually it comes to the point where we just, again, have to just sit with things and just kind of allow them to just unfold the way they are, and not try to, like, I think a lot of the culture, for example, if you look in the Mexican culture, they celebrate death, right? They have the Day of the Dead, and they do all these beautiful things to remember their ancestors. And like you said before, here we kind of act very somber and sad about it. I think it's just a way we look at it. And you know, working with, say, the entheogens, and watching people have an ego death, right? So you, one minute you're Jenna, the next minute you're everything. And then the next minute, you're back to Jenna again. And just for that brief little window, you have this opportunity to see everything for what it is, and not for what our constructs have. And I really think that changes a lot of minds and hearts to be more open to the idea that, death is right there, and it's actually a friend of ours. It's not someone to fight. It's not an enemy. you
Hmm.
know yeah.
Are you comfortable sharing your thoughts on what happens when you die, when your body stops?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So I mean, I haven't died myself personally yet. I mean, maybe at some point, when I'm asleep, I don't know. But from what I've understood from my knowledge and my research, there's different chemicals that release in our brain, right? In particular, the dimethyltryptamine, which comes out of our pineal, right? So this little gland excretes huge amounts of this compound when we're born, when we dream slightly at night, and then when we die. And there are moments where I've seen people who are passing, their eyes get really big. They start to look around, everything starts to, like, almost like it opens up into a bigger field of vision. And I believe that's the compounds releasing in the brain, and literally the light in our eyes starting to change. And, that window of that opportunity comes in, and yeah, it's pretty incredible. So I think there's a lot of chemical stuff going on, and I think it's really beautiful. And I think if we can embrace it and not be so afraid of it, it can be one of the best things that ever happens to us besides being alive. It's part of it. It's hand in hand. It's synonymous, you know.
Mhm. So, can you share a little bit about your experience being present with people who are passing, and what that has meant to you, um, how that feels to you, and maybe how it's evolved? I'm sure the first time and any time there's probably a gradient of experiences there.
It's super humbling, and it's an honor to share a space and time with that. People are really happy when a child comes in and they're there for the birth, and it's a beautiful moment. And honestly, going back to the source, going back to that oneness, it's another time. Yeah, that last breath. I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things that, mm, it's so special. And I think that instead of us running from it, just holding space, and being present and honoring it is it's so important. And remembering those people day in, day out as well, is important, because again, we only see with a certain spectrum of light. So there's things happening right around us that we don't really are privy to. But this, cats and dogs are constantly chasing things that aren't there, right, to us. So I feel like that plays a huge part in when that transition happens. And some of us can experience temperature, some of us can experience different tinglings, and there's all kinds of stuff that can come through. I guess everyone's nervous system is a little different, how it works.
Hmm. Are there ways that you continue to communicate or connect to those who've died in your life?
Yeah, so it's funny. I got it. So my one buddy, Kenny, when he passed away, I actually went and got a tattoo to honor him. And funniest thing happened. I was getting this tattoo put in, and it's up here on my neck, and it was really hurting. And I'm not joking, Jenna. I could hear Kenny laughing at me. He was just laughing. And my buddy doing the ink, I was like, hang on, man, hang on a second. What's the matter? I'm like, hang on. I just let, it was weird. I don't know if it was the pain, And then I was like, is this the pain talking? No, no. I really feel like there's a presence, right? And I think what that has to do with is being open. There's a lot of times where I will, in my mornings, I always think about my ancestors, especially when I do my massage work. I call in for light and to be protected, and whoever's meant to help and be a part of it. And I typically will feel like the room shift. I can feel my energy shift. But that just comes from working on it day in and day out, and like working through my own fields and things like that.
Mm, cool. Um, we talk a lot about like the preparation of death in our own lives, and different ways of our own ceremonies and funerals and things like that. And a lot of people, especially the younger we are, the less we expect we're going to die anytime soon, and so a lot of us don't have any sort of plans made. Have you thought about what you would like your funeral or your end of life experience to be like for those who did not die, who are still here to think about you?
Funny when you say that, because I've actually, when you but for me, I've come to grips with that this is just a shell, right? And that the consciousness that's inside of me is animating it, and I'm doing all these different things. But I always, it's to sound kind of weird, but I always saw myself like pushing some child out of the way of a bus or something, and there won't be anything left. And I was like, hey, whatever, unless you went out doing something noble if possible. But you know, celebration, to me, it's every moment, it's every day. It's just like, I live near the water and there's trees and animals around. So, being able to sit still and watch them and just see the beauty and the amazingness and the intelligence of life itself, and just knowing that it ceases, like it's all good. It's all good. Whatever they want to have this over here, it doesn't matter, honestly.
Whatever we decide for you.
It's all good, because in the end, it's not right. In the end, the energy and the soul is shifted. It's for everyone else who's sitting around and kind of like, oh, this guy, and we want to do something we think is in their best interest, but it's truly for ourselves who are still mourning.
Mhm. Yeah, interesting. Um, do you have any fears around death or anything in the realm of death or those who have died?
I wouldn't really say any fears. I mean, I've come to grips and am prepared. I feel like I've done my work of just like saying what I need to say to the people around me, and letting them know the type of person I am and where my heart is, and carrying a lot of like love and light. So like literally carrying it in my heart. And trying to going back to holding space for people, right? It's like when people cut you off in traffic, it's okay, just let them go. It's not that big. The road's not mine, right? When we can like shift our mindset, I feel like there's a piece to everything.
Mhm. So, for those who are listening and they're just thinking, I have no idea how I'm going to get there, um, what are a few things that we can do in our everyday life to move us closer to that sense of peace and acceptance?
I think just working on the breath, and knowing that we only have so many. And when you can acknowledge that and say, okay, yes, I do have a set number of breaths, and how am I spending those breaths from today on? Am I spending it chastising someone or giving someone a hard time, or am I using it to share love and to bring someone up and celebrate their successes and achievements? I mean, there's so many different ways that we can, one breath at a time, work towards having peace, because in the end, I think stillness leads us there. And so in the yoga practice, when we get to the shavasana or corpse pose, and you just lay still as possible, and just think of what it's like now, the death of the practice, the death of my movement, and now here I lay still. I believe that translates into everyday life. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Yeah.
yeah,
Is there anything else you want to share about death? Maybe even, I mean, I know you've traveled a lot. Is there anything that you've witnessed or experienced,
yeah,
cultures that you think is important to share?
yeah. When I was in India, and people passed, they would do a lot of like they cremate the body, and a lot of bells and clanging the bells and ringing, and just to get the energy and bring it up higher and let it go. I just thought that was really beautiful. Each culture has its own celebration and tradition, and working with it. My uncle had passed about a couple months back, and went to his funeral. And for the Islamic faith, there's no pomp and circumstance. It's just a pine box, and the body, your body's laying in there. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm looking at this pine box, and I'm knowing my uncle's in there. And on the way down, my father was talking about my uncle and saying a few stories about him, and how he had many, many ideas, and never really managed to create anything out of the idea. They were just beautiful thoughts. And then I was like, oh, interesting. And then my father, I noticed he had a very similar pattern with himself. And then I noticed a pattern in myself. And I was like, holy jeepers, here's this thing going down. Now I'm 46. I have so many breaths. Am I going to continue that pattern? Or am I going to break it? And sure enough, one of my inventions or my ideas and thoughts is being in prototype phase right now. And I'm, making this thing happen and bringing it into the world. And I'm really excited. Yeah, I'm really excited about it. And it's going to be something that hopefully can help people. But, it just, for me personally, I wanted to make sure that before my time, I achieve this particular goal. Maybe I'll be a father someday. Maybe I'll get married someday. We don't know yet. We'll see what happens. But what I can do now is to make sure my heart and my goals that I'm achieving now are aligning with that time, because it's right there and it's okay.
Hmm. Yeah, it made me think of a couple things. One is that I had this feeling a few months back where I just was like, I want to be all used up. Like I don't want to be like, just a pile of exhaustion, but I want every inch of love that I can exude to happen, all my ideas to come. Like I just want everything I could possibly gift to be completely used up before I go. Like I mean, does anyone get to do that? Probably few people get to do all of the things, but I just want that sense of not withholding anything. Um, and the other thing that made me think of is in a recent conversation, we were talking about um, the death of people we never met that came before us. So, like our ancestors, and how that's influenced who we are. So, one of the guests was talking about how she was named after a family member that had been murdered like in a war, and she didn't know that she knew where her ancestry had come from, but she didn't know. And so that kind of changed. She thought about the lineage of that and how that's shown up in her life. um, is there anyone that's passed before you arrived that you feel connected to or feels a part of your story?
When I work with people who are like Reiki masters and when I do massage and body work with them, typically they will say that they see behind me this older Indian man with long white hair and a long white beard, and he's just smiling and super happy that I'm working with light. And I asked my mother, "Hey, mom, is there some?" And sure enough, a few generations back, I have a like healer in the family lineage, and I feel like that because I've just worked through intuition. I don't, just kind of going where I'm guided. So yeah, I believe there's someone like that around. And my friends who've passed beforehand, we'd always joke about Star Wars and like being one with the Force. And I feel them. I feel them. There's no denying it. Whether it's them or the energy, just taking that kind of nurturing hug shape. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Mhm.
I love it.
Me
Uh,
too. It's
yeah.
great. Things to
Any,
be afraid of. Everyone's so afraid, and people are so like, there's so much anxiety, the fear of cessation, right? The fear of not being existing anymore as we are here, emulating the way we move and interacting with the way I interact. It's so much behind that it's like, it's an illusion. There's this fear behind it. And, working with the medicines, or meditation or whatever it is that allows us to break down and just kind of just be for a moment. It's so important. It helps us to like deal with all these different things that happen around us and work with them within our own way that's healthy and productive for us and not feeling stuck. Yeah.
well, Renee, I'm so grateful to have had this conversation with you. Thank you for joining this sort of movement that I'm trying to establish, which is just conversations around death. They don't have to be heavy. They don't even have to be, that integrated or tangible in planning or anything like that. But just getting people to ponder these questions for themselves and have their own answers or movement towards them. And I think one thing that came through really strong today was just the importance of breath. Right? It's just we hear it all the time, but really it is kind of that simple.
Yeah, it really is. And one of the things I think that when we first started talking about this, I made a comment about we're all here just to guide each other home.
I love that.
And it really is true. Like what you're doing with this show right now, you're helping people to realize that we're going to go home to a different place at some point, and it's okay, and it's all right. Just enjoy what we can while we're here, and be ready to enjoy the next when it's there, because this obviously isn't it. There's more to this than just you know this little show that we're all running through.
Well, thanks for walking me a little bit more closer to home.
Oh, Jenna, thanks. It was a pleasure. And thanks for walking me as well. I really appreciate it.